Hey everybody, John Casani here, Calusa Waterkeeper. We're out here on Matlacha Pass this morning. Beautiful morning out here. And I'm very pleased to have with me Mr. Codty Pierce, who's a professional fishing guide here on Matlacha Pass and some other areas. So welcome, Codty.
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we're sitting in Cody's boat and just sort of anchored up and doing our little words from the Waterkeeper thing. And just by way of introduction, if you haven't been on Matlacha Pass or know much about it, the pass is a state aquatic preserve and it's designated as an outstanding Florida water by rule and statute. And kind of what that means is that, when the water body was designated in OFW, water quality was not supposed to decline. That's the reason it has special protection. So we wanted to spend some time with Cody this morning, and he's got a really interesting background. Um, so, Cody, tell us a little bit about your growing up, how you kind of fell in love with this area in Matlacha Pass, and kind of where you've gotten to now.
Well, John, it'll be a pleasure. It's going to be hard to do in 60 seconds or less here. So, very lucky to grow up over by Sanibel. So, I've gone to grade school, junior high, and high school here, and the entire time growing up, making a living outside, but more importantly, enjoying this whole area. So, whether it be canoeing or fossil hunting or fishing, and then going to make a living in fishing, I've been very blessed to grow up here, from a grassroots level all the way to what I'm doing now and trying to, pursue a career in the environment.
Yeah, we'd love to get Cody out over a beer and hear about some of the adventures and what have you. But what we've seen, like we've seen in many of the back bays along the southwest and actually the whole western coast of Florida, we're beginning to see some change, and this change hasn't always been for the better. One of the concerns that we have is the state's designated Matlacha Pass as verified impaired for nutrients, fecal bacteria, and shellfish. And there's some concern now that there's this imbalance in flora and fauna, and we think that's due to nutrient over enrichment. So those are the principal pollutants and problems we're seeing. If you zoom out on a map and you look at the landscape around here, we're really almost become like an island kind of ecosystem. And we have a massive metropolitan area over here in Cape Coral, some cluster development here in Matlacha. The pass is influenced by Clusatchee River a little bit when the tides are right, and the same thing with the Peace River. And so it's become a big mixing zone. And so what are you seeing, Cody, as some of the principal problems now? As someone who's on the water every day, makes a living out here, grew up on the water, what are your biggest concerns about what's happened over time?
Well, thanks, John. And that's a big question to try to answer. But, from my experience, that as time has progressed, I think our number one issue we're dealing with is the dissolved nitrates. So, whether that's coming from human influence, from the decomposing algae matter, there is something, varying in the chemistry of the water here. That's having profound effects. We're noticing that it's not just happening in a 6 month or even a calendar year period, but we're seeing multiple steps of this, especially after that big red tide bloom of 2018. So I would say first and foremost has got to be the nitrates, and secondarily, coming along with being a metropolis now, is just the heavy pressure of boats, whether that's direct or indirect. Pressures on the ecosystem. It all plays out. The more people are out in the field, the more the field gets torn up, so to speak. So those are the two things that I think that we need to work on the most, and definitely are at the highest threat level to what we have left here. So.
Great. Yeah, it's the same story with most of the back bays here in Southwest Florida, and we're beginning to see some change in 10,000 Islands as well. So, the $64,000 question is how do we get it back, kind of thing? How do we restore the resource to its once majestic level? And, I failed to say that even in the early 1900s, President Teddy Roosevelt designated all the islands in Matlacha Pass as national wildlife refuges. So there's all these layers of protection, but we're still seeing decline in the resource. So what do you think needs to be done to restore it? I mean, we look to the landscape and we look to some fairly obvious sources, but great to hear what you're thinking we need to do to kind of restore it.
Well, you know, when you lose, parts of such a magnificent estuary like what we have here, that's, it's a very hard question to where to even start when there's so many aspects of it. I think the main thing, and this will kind of answer the question, is to make sure that we know the importance of saving what is left, that nothing is unobtainable. So that's first and foremost, is that no matter what the cost or what we need to do, there's a reason that we should make strides to progress to try to implement, restoration. But I think it comes down to knowledge. We have so many people that move down to this area now that may love the outdoors, that perhaps just never in their wildest dreams expected they would end up in such a diverse ecosystem like this. So if we can try to teach, whether it's the fertilizer ordinances, or how septic systems affect like your waterway, or even what your yard is doing, when you hire or put certain things down. There's many aspects, but it's just how we can try to progress and look to the future on how our impacts are going to be affected in the estuary, especially as we deal with water, with climate change and sea level rises, because as that water progresses, it's going to continue to encounter us on our turf many more times, which will then affect our estuary. So that's my biggest thing, is just it's got to be knowledge. We got to start thinking about it, and we have to have talks about it. It's an uncomfortable thing to talk about at times, because it affects us business-wise. It affects our recreation. For a lot of us, it affects our zen. But I think that's the most important thing, is to try to have these tough conversations. It's like a parent talking to a teenager. There's some awkward stuff we have to go through, but it's important. It's for the betterment overall of society, and I think that's where we need to start.
Excellent assessment, and Cody's a great ambassador for the resource here, and we don't have a lot of time for our video today, but I just wanted to conclude by saying thanks so much, Cody, for spending a little time with us. We really admire and appreciate the work you're doing, not only as a fishing guide, but as a conservationist, an educated conservationist. And if you get time to schedule a trip with Cody, I think you'll learn a lot, and maybe catch some fish too still. So saltwaterbackcountry.com. So that's pretty much it today. We're going to continue to try to do some interviews with local folks on water resource issues. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, thanks for everything you do out there, and we want to hear what you're seeing and hearing. So you can always contact us at CalusAWaterkeeper.org or info@CalusAWaterkeeper.org, and that'll get back to me, and we'll follow up. And just want to send us pictures on Facebook, that's fine too. We've had some great pictures and videos lately, so we really appreciate that. So thanks so much, and hey, we'll see you out there real soon.